Well, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in for another very exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast. For the horde of you that are new today, over 6,000 kids registered from around the world, including, I think, most of British Columbia. If you are new to us, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And everything we do goes to our YouTube channel. So you can check out this program in 3 weeks, 3 years. You can check out like 4,000 other broadcasts. Just head there and see topics on everything you're ever keen on in science and exploration. We've had some of the coolest people on planet Earth join us over the last 11 years. Now, before I dive in with today's topic du jour, I do want to note we have a Kahoot today. So between our talk and our Q&A, if you want to play along with a little 4-question quiz to test your understanding and have some fun, you can pull up that game pin in a separate tab. My goal today, with how big an audience we have, is to break our all-time Kahoot record. So if you want to play along, we'll be doing that in about 20-25 minutes. Now, the reason so many of you are here is that today we are going to learn about growing up whale. We're doing an amazing series in collaboration with our friends at Parks Canada in the British Columbia coastal parks. Now, we've done over 100 shows with Parks Canada over the years, but this is our single biggest series because you guys are all so excited about it. So do check out that YouTube channel for We Stand on Guard for Thee and Salmon Sisters we had in the last 2 days. Tomorrow we've got Growing Up Wolf, and already 2,000 of you signed up for that one as well. So point is, lots to explore and discover. So nice to meet you all, and we hope you'll join us again in the months and years to come. But without further ado, you're not here for me. I'm going to turn you over to Joe Daniels at Parks Canada to blow us away with Growing Up Whale. Hey, Joe, welcome to the broadcast, man.
Hello, bonjour. Thanks, Jesse. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here today. You see, I've got a bit of a presentation coming up. I'm really excited to answer your questions. I'll start with a presentation here. Hopefully that might answer some of them. Really happy to be here today. So just to give us a bit of orientation as to where we are, I am joining you live from Vancouver. So you can see in the top right corner of the screen, the dot for Vancouver there. I'm on the traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations here. And I'll be talking a bit today about some of our locations in the Gulf Islands and on Vancouver Island. Mostly I'll be talking about Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. So you can see just south of Vancouver, just below that dot, there's a collection of islands with yellow on them. That is Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. And I'll also be mentioning Fort Rod Hill and Fiskard Lighthouse. That's location number 1, just below and to the left of Victoria there. Now, a little bit about Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. It's kind of like a quilt of provincial, federal parks. Parks Canada is the federal park service, the national parks, but also First Nations territory. There's more than a dozen coastal First Nations who have their traditional territories in the Southern Gulf Islands, as well as different private landowners there as well, who live in different communities on the islands as well. Just over half of the park, so just over 50%, 51% exactly, is protected marine areas. So a lot of marine area in the park. And the team at Gulf Islands National Park Reserve works to monitor at least 7 species at risk. The number fluctuates from time to time. I've actually got some cool footage here from some of the monitoring work that our team does. So this is a film that was taken in Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. And if you look closely behind those weeds, you might see a crab battle about to take place. There's crab number 3 coming in from parts unknown. Well, actually, we do know he lives in Gulf Islands, but that's a little crab battle for us. And then also a really neat deeper water video. Here we have a lingcod coming up to say hello. And in the background, you can see a small shark that we get off our coast here that are called spiny dogfish. Really important for us to remember that this is a really dynamic ecosystem. There's many different species that live in Gulf Islands National Park Reserve, including a group of animals called cetaceans. Cetaceans are the family of animals that whales, dolphins, and porpoises belong to. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about 3 members of the cetacean family, killer whales, as well as humpback whales and gray whales. So this is an image to show you how big a killer whale can get. I have this silhouette of a diver here for comparison, but it's always important to remember to give wildlife space. If I was diving, I would not want to be getting this close to a killer whale. They are very large animals. They max out at about 9 meters, which is about 29.5 feet. Very, very big animals and very powerful animals. We have some very special killer whales here on our coast. We actually have 3 types of killer whales that live here, but the one I'll be talking about the most is the one that's really only found in and around the southern Gulf Islands, and those are called southern resident killer whales. They're a type of killer whale whose favorite food is salmon. So we have a picture here of a killer whale eating salmon, and they belong to 3 different pods or family groups, J, K, and L pod. I can play some calls for these whales today. It's kind of interesting, but each whale family has kind of their own trademark song. So here is J pod. Here we have K pod. And it's a little hard to hear, but this is L pod here.
Joe, those aren't actually coming through, buddy. I'm going to try and see if I can get the recordings for those and play them for someone in a minute.
Let me see. So I'll just make a note. So I was playing these calls, and there's some calls I was going to play in this presentation. If they don't come through, this is a website where you can find killer whale calls, really great recordings. This is a great resource for educators, orcasound.net. All the calls I was going to be playing today come from this website. Hopefully we can figure out that tech challenge, but just in case we can't, please check out that website and hear some of these calls for yourself. Kind of a fun thing about killer whales is they often do some kind of interesting stuff, and we don't always understand why. This is a photo of a southern resident killer whale wearing a salmon hat. This is kind of an interesting behavior that we observed in southern resident killer whales in the 1980s, almost like a fashion trend. And we've started to see it again. So we're not sure if this is actually a comeback of that salmon hat trend or just whales being whales, having fun, putting things on their heads. Sometimes we see southern resident killer whales doing a behavior here we call kelping, where they have bull kelp draped across their back. It's kind of an interesting thing. We're not exactly sure why they do that. But we're here to learn more about growing up whales. So how do killer whales grow up in and around the Gulf Islands? I've got a photo here showing a juvenile killer whale, a baby killer whale here, what we call a calf. And I've got an illustration here that gives you a better view. So newborn killer whale calves are big from the get-go. They're more than 2 meters long and weigh upwards of 400 pounds. So pretty big baby to start. You'll notice they're more peachy than white in those patches on their body, kind of a mix of black and peach color. Again, we're not entirely sure why that is. The best understanding is that it's actually the blood vessels under the baby's skin kind of showing through. They don't have as much blubber, as much fat on their bodies when they're younger. They often kind of look a little shriveled and wrinkly as they grow. Like most mammals, killer whales drink milk as babies. For about the first 6 months of their life, they rely on milk from their mothers. Their teeth do grow in at about 6 months, and kind of an interesting difference between humans and killer whales, they only get 1 set of teeth. So we might have some friends here joining today who are losing their baby teeth and growing in adult teeth. Killer whales only get adult teeth. They only get 1 set. So we have a bit of a benefit on them when it comes to teeth. We get more teeth than killer whales. Here we see a killer whale at about 1 year old, and you can see those white patches are really starting to come in, and we can start seeing the saddle patch behind the killer whale's dorsal fin. Now, the saddle patch is really important for researchers. That patch is unique on every whale. So it's a way that researchers identify different whales and tell them apart. They generally use photography of whales to kind of identify different individuals from the different families. Now, killer whales, as they're growing up, learn a lot like humans do, and that's through playing with their families and their siblings. Here we have an image of J19, one of the resident killer whales, rolling her calf, J62. This is a behavior that adults often do with their calves to get them kind of comfortable with that motion of turning in the water, diving, spinning, these really dynamic movements they need to learn to catch prey in the water. These are animals that hunt big animals. The salmon they catch are very big. And so they need to be able to be fast and agile to catch those animals. Sometimes when killer whales are playing, they can play kind of rough. I've got an image here of a killer whale from J-Pod. There's another southern resident named Moby. And you'll notice some scars on Moby's side. The distance between these scars is just right for killer whale teeth. Killer whales play a game when they're younger, actually, even when they're adults, called raking. Sometimes they'll scratch another whale using the teeth in their mouths, and it can leave a mark sometimes. It's kind of like how people can play kind of rough. I have a friend who was wrestling with his brother, and they fell into a coffee table and got a scratch on his forehead. He's got a scar there today as a grown-up. Kind of the same thing we see in whales. As they grow up, sometimes they learn through some pretty rough play. Killer whales, J-pod, L-pod, K-pod, actually all killer whales, every killer whale pod, have really tight family groups. Mother killer whales are kind of the leaders of their pods. They're what we call a matriarchal species, meaning that mothers, females, tend to dominate their social groups. And males live with their mothers forever. They don't really leave their mothers. And when their mothers pass away, they're often adopted by a sister. The males kind of stick with the mothers, the females of their pod, because they're really the keepers of knowledge. It's really amazing how long killer whales can live. Male killer whales can live on average 30 years, but sometimes live up to 60. Female killer whales live on average 60 years, 50, 60 years, and can sometimes live as long as 90. This is an image of a killer whale named L25. Her name is Ocean's Sun. And as far as we can tell, she is the oldest killer whale in the world. She's a southern resident killer whale who lives in and around the Gulf Islands. And she's between 95 and 98 years old. It's really amazing how long these animals can live. So we don't just have killer whales in Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. We also have humpback whales, gray whales, bigger whales that belong to a family we call mysticetes. They're what we call baleen whales. So these are whales that don't have teeth. Their mouths are filled with this kind of hairy stuff called baleen that they use to filter feed. And I always find it amazing that these animals, some of the biggest animals ever to live on Earth, get this big by eating some of the smallest things out in the ocean. This is an image of a humpback whale calf who's known by Pop-Tart is her name. She was born in 2016.
No, I'm just
yeah, great name. She got that name because people would often see her popping out of the water the way she'd breach, kind of like a Pop-Tart jumping out of your toaster at home. These animals have massive, massive babies. Again, there's some sounds that I was going to play there. Visit orcasounds.net. They have a great array of humpback whale calls as well. And this is an image of a gray whale with her calf as well. Gray whale and humpback calves are massive. When they're born, they're twice as long as a killer whale, 4 meters roughly, and can weigh as much as 2,000 pounds. So think a baby the size of a compact car. Pretty incredible to think. And again, they get this big by eating some of the smallest things out in the ocean. This is an image of a humpback whale, an illustration, again, with that diver silhouette to give you an idea how big these animals get. Upwards of 50 feet in length. Here's the gray whale as well. Good comparison would be if you were to be standing next to a big transport truck with a trailer attached. That's roughly how big these animals are. They're absolutely enormous. Humpback whales are filter feeders that tend to feed in the ocean column and feed on things like herring and different krill. They have this incredible method of hunting called bubble netting, where they work together to create these kind of traps of bubbles blown from their blowholes underwater. And then on a signal, they all dive up through the middle to eat the ball of fish that's in there. It's really amazing if you ever have a chance to see it. Gray whales are actually bottom feeders. So we often see them close to shore in the shallows, digging around in the muck and mud on the bottom of the ocean floor, digging up little critters that might be hiding in there, and then filtering that through their baleen plates in their mouths. So that's how they find food. Now, both humpback whales and gray whales are very, very attentive parents. They stick close to their calves throughout most of their periods. The young are growing up, so close that they often will like to touch them. Humpback whales seem to rely a lot on touch and scent to find their way in the water. And so being able to keep contact with their calf helps them know their calf is there and their calf is safe. And it's really important that their calves stay safe because these animals have incredible migrations. Humpback whales and gray whales often give birth in tropical waters. So we're talking down off of places like Hawaii, Baja, California, the west coast of Mexico, and Central America. And then they travel up north to waters off of British Columbia, Canada, Alaska, Washington State to feed in the wintertime. This is a migration about 14,000 kilometers. So to put that in perspective, that's like me traveling from here in Vancouver to Halifax and back, and then taking a second trip from Vancouver to Whitehorse and back. It's an incredible distance these animals travel every year. And they often make this long and sometimes dangerous journey with their calves alongside them. Here's an image of a couple humpback whales traveling together, a mother and her calf. This is another aerial photo of gray whales and their calves. Gray whales are actually so attentive and so protective of their calves. It's often hard for researchers to get good photos of them underwater. So aerial photos are the best way for us to document them. And actually, they had a reputation for being fierce defenders of their young, where they were having their calves back in the time of whaling, when people actually used to hunt whales. Really glad people don't do as much of that anymore. But they were known as devilfish because they were so strong and protective of their young. And as I was saying, that migration they take is perilous. These animals face many threats. One of them is killer whales, actually. There's a type of offshore killer whale that's known to hunt gray whales, other larger whales. In fact, that name killer whale comes from an old name, killer of whales. So old Norwegian fishermen tend to observe them catching other whales out in the ocean. That's where that name comes from. This is an image of a killer whale attacking a gray whale. Calves are young and small and weak, and so they're a great target for predators. And so that's why those parents are so protective. But whales face a lot of human threats as well. This is an image of some of my friends at Fisheries and Oceans Canada untangling a whale that has been caught in fishing gear. Many animals like humpback whales and gray whales, large animals in the ocean, and not just large animals, small animals as well, can be caught in fishing gear that gets lost at sea and continues fishing, what we call ghost fishing. Killer whale and humpback whale and gray whale entanglements do happen. The larger whales, humpbacks and grays, it's more common. And it's something that is a concern for these animals. And our friends at Fisheries will often respond if a whale is seen that's been entangled, and will do their best to help. Vessel strikes are a major threat to these animals. This is an image that shows a wound on the back of a humpback whale that was caused by a vessel strike. So being hit by a boat. Humpback whales are kind of unpredictable where they'll surface. And so it's really important for any boater, if you see a blow, go slow. You'll hear me say that again. And it's a really good way to make sure that you're giving whales a lot of space and you're able to react quickly if you see a whale that might surface in front of you. Lack of food, climate change can be a major threat to animals, any animal, but also whales as well. This is a really sad picture of a gray whale that washed up on the west side of Vancouver Island. This was something we were observing a lot in recent years, was gray whales that seemed to be washing up that had passed away. And the best estimate we can find is that for many of these animals, climate change is impacting their ability to find food. Many of those little critters that gray whales are digging for in the sand like colder water. And so they have to move further and further north to find that food. It's a really tragic impact of climate change, and we see it impacting these animals as well. There's some really specific challenges for killer whales. Southern resident killer whales in the Gulf Islands are critically endangered. There's only 74 of those animals left between those three family groups, J, K, and L pod. I mentioned that their favorite food is salmon. More specifically, it's Chinook salmon, which they need to eat 18 to 25 of every day. Sadly, because of climate change and many other factors, the Chinook salmon runs haven't been as strong in southern British Columbia, in the southern Strait of Georgia, around where these animals live. And as a result of that, they're having a bit of a hard time finding food. How they find food is one of the challenges as well. Killer whales use echolocation, kind of like bats, almost like an organic sonar to find food underwater. I have some calls that you can get from orcasounds.net where you can hear the types of calls that whales use for echolocation. Really, really fascinating how they do this. They project the sounds through an organ on their forehead called a melon, bounce it off targets in the ocean, and then receive the vibrations back through their lower jaw, which goes into their ear bones. Vessel noise from boats traveling through killer whale habitat can really impact their ability to find their way, to find their food, and also to find each other. I was mentioning those unique family calls. Boat noise can really disrupt their ability to find each other. So it's one of the main challenges these animals face is just noise from boat traffic, what we call marine noise pollution. And lastly, one of the main challenges these animals face on our coast is something that we call biomagnification. This is a big scientific term, and it's caused by things that are often referred to as forever chemicals. There's an acronym called POPs, that stands for persistent organic pollutants. These are chemicals that tend to build up in the body fats of large animals, especially top predators, that can make them sick and really impact their ability to have babies and care for their babies. Some folks might have heard in the news back in 2020, there was a killer whale by the name of Taliqua who lost a calf and spent much of 2 to 3 weeks pushing her calf around the coast with her pod, mourning the loss of that baby. To commemorate that event, there's a beautiful sculpture that's been installed at Fort Rod Hill and Fiskard Lighthouse. That's that National Historic Site I mentioned that's just outside of Victoria. It's called A Mother's Love, and it's by Lekwungen artist Darlene Gate. And it's a beautiful monument to Taliqua and that story. As a positive, Taliqua has had other babies since then that have survived. But in that tour of grief, she really showed the world that these animals need help and made headline news, and really is kind of like a spokesperson for these animals and needing to help them. But what are some things you can do to help? I mentioned if you see a blow, go slow. If you and your family are boaters, and really we have whales in pretty much all of our ocean waters around Canada, so that if you are a boater, please be mindful. If you see a blow, slow right down. Stop your boat if you can. Give whales lots of space. This is the law here in Canada. It's one of the things that we work with Fisheries and Oceans Canada and our partners in government to do is make sure people are following those rules in the National Park Reserve. For humpback whales and gray whales, those big whales, you want to stay between 100 and 200 meters away from them. For killer whales, it's the law. You need to stay 400 meters away here in Canada. There's some boats that have whale experts on them or might actually have a signal up to let you know that there's a whale nearby. This is the flag that you might see a boat flying here to let you know, hey, there's a whale here. Give this area some space. So saying 100 meters, just to put that in perspective, 100 meters, about 10 times the length of a school bus. So for those humpback whales, gray whales, between 10 to 20 school buses away and 40 school buses away from those killer whales. A great way that you can see whales without disturbing them, I was mentioning how boat noise can be a real challenge for these animals, is something called the whale trail. So there are some places throughout Gulf Islands National Park Reserve where you can see whales from land and actually have a very great chance of doing that. I have a little zoom in of a map of Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. This is Saturna Island. And at the end there, you can see a spot called East Point with that whale trail logo. East Point is one of the best places in the world to see whales from land. Boiling Reef just off there has an upwelling. So there's lots of nutrients coming up from the ocean bottom that whales and many of the things that whales like to eat are there to eat. So it's a great opportunity to see these animals, and they can come pretty close to shore. I've got a great image here showing a killer whale breaching right off of East Point. So these are folks at East Point seeing that whale from land. If you see whales, report them. This is a symbol for the Whale Report app. If you look on you're in the Google Play Store and the app stores, you should find this. It's totally free. And it's a great way for you to report whale sightings and help inform researchers working on our coast to protect these animals. This is the OceanWise certification logo. If you're a seafood lover, I like to eat seafood, make sure it's harvested sustainably. This is a great way to tell if the food you're eating has been harvested sustainably from the ocean. Really important that we make sure that we're leaving lots of food in the ocean for the animals that live there, not just taking it all for ourselves. And lastly, I think it's really important that we all remember that every drain in our home and on our street will eventually empty into a stream that will lead to the ocean. So we all need to do our part to be responsible in making sure that the stuff going down our drains isn't going to hurt the wildlife there. We're going to want to make sure we read our labels, and we're going to want to make sure that products that we're using aren't going to be harmful to the marine environment when they reach the ocean. That's a little bit about growing up whale and some of the things you guys can do to help. I'm here and really excited to answer your questions. Hey, Jesse, thanks for coming back.
Thank you so much, Joe. What a deep dive into some really, really special species. We're going to begin with our Kahoot in just a minute. Now, I will bring this up. If you're new to Kahoot, the faster you answer, the more points you get. And what you win is Joe and I's everlasting respect. But before I do that, as we're getting you guys cued into the Kahoot with that pin below, I'm going to play our videos with the audio so you can actually hear all these great whales. So let me pull up our first one with our different pods of our orcas. I want to stress too,
that's great.
To see our gray whales and humpback whales. I'd love to see an orca. A lot of our BC crowd, you guys are used to these, but they're really special animals. So that's our top pod. Which one's that, Joe?
That's J pod. Next one will be K pod.
Just a little bit different. How interesting.
A little bit different. And then this next one's L pod, and it's a little hard to hear.
Yeah, he's a little bit quieter, but really, really powerful for those first two. Very cool. And then we're going to skip down to our humpback friend. Okay, so let's see where that guy is.
So that's that picture with Pop-Tart. There should be those calls there on that picture of Pop-Tart.
Where is he? Oh, there he is. Cool. Listen now.
So this one's gray whales. This is a video with a gray whale call. Please feel free to play that, Jesse.
Yeah. So much deeper. So fantastic.
Very deep calls. And just going to give it a moment so you can hear.
Yeah.
There's another one. I've heard some research say some of the calls that gray whales make actually kind of sound like underwater bongo drums. It's kind of wild, some of the sounds these animals make.
And then here's our humpback friends.
So
one of my favorite noises in nature. I love it. Awesome, guys. Well, glad we could sneak those in for y'all.
Really good. Thanks, Jesse.
We're going to queue up our Kahoot now. So for everyone who's signed into that, fantastic. We're going to get underway. There's 32 of you here so far. Let's get to it. And then we're going to dive in with our Cougar Cub crew for our first question. All our live classes, if you're on YouTube, you can share questions in the chat anytime. And we're going to take as many as we can over the next 15 minutes. But here we go. 3, 2, 1. Question 1. The oldest known killer whale in the world is how old? Who is paying attention? 20 years, 10 years, 50 years, or around 95 years? One of my favorite comments in the chat for the whale calls was that the Australian Shepherd was excited by K-Pod. So was my Rottweiler beside me. All right, 2 more seconds. Get those answers in. Yes, the answer was around 95 years. Whales are some of the only animals on this planet that live as long, if not more than people do. So really, really good job. Kind Eagle has our lead. Joe, question 2. Baby gray and humpback whales are as big as a what? A toaster, a car, an oven, or a dog? An unusual grouping of things to compare to.
What do we think, folks?
I've seen one baby whale in person, and it's pretty monstrous. It's truly amazing that in Canada, and for our American friends too, we've got whales on our coast that you can just go on tours and see. The correct answer, yes, is car. Whales are gigantic. A baby blue whale, for comparison, is about the size of an elephant, which is totally ridiculous. All right, Kind Eagle still in the lead. What are some cool hunting techniques of the whales discussed today? So we covered a few of these. Bubble netting, trap feeding, coordinated pack hunting, or hint, hint, nudge, nudge. All of the above. If I include all of the above, I might be trying to guide you that way so that you'll keep those concepts in mind. Bubble netting is one of the coolest things in all of nature. I hope everyone take the chance. Look up bubble netting. It'll blow your mind. It's so, so neat. A lot of you went straight to that one, but all of the above is the correct answer. Way to go, everyone. All right, let's see what that does. Kind Eagle keeps our lead almost wire to wire. True or false? Slowing down ships and harbors is one of the easiest ways to protect whales. I really want to reinforce this because we cover a lot of whale programs, and this is a really big thing for you to all go away from this program with. The answer, I hope you're all nailing, is true. Yes, slow down your ship. If you slow down your car, you're less likely to cause an accident on land. If you slow down your ship, you're less likely to cause an accident in the water. It's okay to go a little bit slower. We'll still get that stuff to shore, but it helps protect our whale friends. Let's see what our podium is. And then Mr. Alston, Cullen, LaVie, Mrs. Fisher, and our Oakville crew in that order. YouTubers, you guys can share as well. We'd love to hear from you. Our winner in our Kahoot, I think wire to wire, is Kind Eagle. Way to go, guys.
Nice.
Thank you so much for playing along with that. And we're heading to Alberta. Mr. Alston, come on in and take us away with our first question. Hey, guys.
Come on over, Eva.
Hey.
Wait, why are you up there, guys?
Hi, Ava.
Okay, this is Eva.
Hi, Eva.
How big is their mouth?
Ooh.
How big is their mouth? That's a really great question. So for humpback whales and gray whales, I don't know the exact number, but very, very big. Easily, like I'd say like 10, 12 feet. They can open their mouths really wide. But those ones, those gray and humpback whales, kind of a fun fact about them, their throat is actually only about the size of my fist. I was saying how really small food. And so if you ever by some misadventure find yourself in the mouth of one of these big whales, they cannot swallow you. That's not something they can do. A great way to show you how big a killer whale's mouth is I actually have a replica of a killer whale skull with me. So I'll try to bring this over so folks can see it.
Look at it.
But this gives you an idea of how big this animal is. Its mouth is probably about as long as my forearm, and they can open their mouths quite wide. Killer whales eat very big prey. The Chinook salmon that southern resident killer whales eat can sometimes weigh upwards of 100 pounds, a massive, massive fish. And then we also have a type of killer whale on our coast called Biggs killer whales. Some people call them transient killer whales. They hunt seals and sea lions, really big prey, even bigger than a salmon. And so they need a big mouth full of big teeth to catch that prey.
I really think it's one of the most metal skulls in the history of animals on this planet. I mean, they hunt great white sharks. They hunt blue whales, the biggest animals to ever exist. Killer whales have been observed hunting. So they are the apex predator in the ocean. We're going to come back to some things for them in the chat in just a minute. But Cullen, if you want to come on in and take us away, you're good to go. Hey.
Hi. Can
Hi there.
whales smell and do whales sleep?
Ooh.
So was that two questions? So do whales sleep? Absolutely, they sleep. What was the first part there?
Do they smell?
Can whales
Do they smell?
Like, can they smell?
Oh, can they
smell?
smell? Yeah.
Well, I will say there are some whales that are notorious for smelling bad on our coast. There's a group of whales I didn't talk about called minke whales. Sometimes scientists call them stinky minkies because they have awful breath. So yes, sometimes they smell bad, but they do have the ability to smell. It's interesting, but some researchers believe that humpback whales mainly use their smell to find food. There's a chemical called dimethyl sulfide that's given off by plankton moving in the water that smells a bit like watermelon, I'm told. So that might be one of the ways they're finding prey underwater. In terms of sleeping, yes, whales sleep. And in fact, some of them sleep in really interesting ways. Killer whales actually sleep half a brain at a time. So they'll shut off half of their brain to sleep and keep the other side active so that they remember while they're asleep to make sure they're breathing and staying on the surface of the water. It's really amazing. Whales have a lot in common with us, but a lot that's very, very different too.
I mean, sometimes in class and sometimes when I'm watching TV, it feels like half my brain goes to sleep, but that's not quite accurate. Our whales actually do that. On the stinky note, we did a beluga program the other day with Justine Hudson, who literally like catches the snot with a big snot net, and a whole section of that was how much it stinks. So great question, guys.
Yeah.
All right, North Topsail Beach, LaVie, our winner of our Kahoot, come on in and take us away. Hey.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Doing great. How are you doing today?
Awesome, thank you for asking. So I was wondering, last April, we were very lucky to see a humpback whale for 45 minutes. We saw him breaching and slapping his fin on the water. What do you think was he doing? Could there have been two of them, or?
It's possible. So If you didn't see another one, maybe it was just by itself. But it's one of the things I love about whales is there's a lot about them we really don't fully know or understand. There's a lot we do. There's a lot that's still kind of a mystery. Nobody really knows why whales like breaching. There's a lot of theories for it, like why they like jumping out of the water. Slapping on the water can be done for a bunch of things, maybe signaling other whales to let them know about danger or to let them know they're there. But some people think whales jump out of the water because it helps them remove barnacles or things that might be stuck to their bodies. Some people think they do it because it feels good. Maybe the cold air on their bodies feels great, or maybe it's something that's just fun to do. Yep. Whales like to have fun just like we do. So I'm not sure exactly why, but there's a bunch of possibilities.
I stick with the fun idea. I mean, so many animals. Anyone who has a dog or cat knows that they like to have fun. This is true across the entire animal kingdom. Like, we need not be, reluctant to think that way. Pretty much every species that's observed, from reptiles to fish to mammals to birds, has fun. I'm going with that. There's a lot of potential hypotheses, and I'm really glad we got that question. Thanks, guys. Mrs. Fisher's class, your camera's off, but I'll come to you in Carsonville for an audio spot if it all works out. Hello, folks.
How long do they breathe underwater for?
Ooh, really good question. I don't know the exact number. Whales don't breathe underwater, so it's a good distinction. Whales are mammals like us, and so they need to breathe air at the surface. It's part of why whales have a blowhole on top of their head, because animals that live in the water that need to breathe, it's better if you have a nose on top of your head. It makes it easier for you to breathe that way. Whales can hold their breath underwater for a very long time, upwards of half an hour, but that's an estimate. Again, I don't know the exact number.
I think the record is sperm whale, and it's over 90 minutes. So an hour and a half is the record for a sperm whale, which is not one we covered today, but it's a really cool question. Thanks, guys. Yeah. We're going to go back for a whole other round with our live classes because we're whipping through these, but I'm going to take a few from our YouTube friends, but they're some of my favorite YouTube questions ever. So our 4B ballers, and hello, Mr. Wingard, welcome into South Carolina. Why do you think they have different diets? Is it inherited trait or learned behavior?
Fascinating question. And it's a bit of both. Really neat thing about killer whales is we have killer whales in every ocean on Earth. They're all over the place, and different groups of killer whales adapt to the prey that's available to them. So there's killer whales that specialize in hunting tuna out in the open ocean. There's some that specialize in hunting penguins in Antarctica. It's really interesting how different whales in different places kind of adapt to the prey that's available to them. So that's part of why they definitely learn the behavior from their families. It's a really important part of how these whales grow up, as I was talking about, is learning how to hunt from their families and learning where to find food. Really interesting thing, but yeah, they kind of learn that behavior in their families, and it changes depending on where they're living. Some people ask me how those killer whales, we have southern resident killer whales here. Some people ask why they don't learn from those other whales, the big killer whales, to eat seals and sea lions. Honestly, it's just because that is how those whales have evolved over thousands of years. Yep. That is almost like their culture. And so they stick with hunting that prey because they kind of have almost like a culture amongst themselves.
A lot of smart creatures, so cetaceans, the whales, other apes like us, have very distinct cultures, just like people do. And they can be very different from one another, and they can transmit in the same way that, like in Canada, like in the United States, or most of our audience is from today, you have different cultures getting together and sort of learning from each other. We've had examples of that in the world of whales too. It's a really cool question, one of my very favorite things in all of nature. So thank you for that, guys, very, very much. All right, Elena joining us in Bracebridge. Hello, Elena. She wants to know, humpback whales have barnacles on them. They often have these big groups of barnacles, but I'm with her. You don't see that on other whales very often. Are they only for humpback whales? Do they happen on other whales, but just more on humpbacks for some reason? Do we know?
They do happen on other whales. It's interesting. Some barnacles actually only grow on certain whales. They have like almost like a mutual relationship, mutualism, where these animals like to kind of coexist with whales. There's a bunch of reasons why whales might want to have barnacles. There's some theories that maybe they use them as armor to protect themselves. And the barnacles get a free meal off of whatever the whale's eating. They move around with that. Generally, the barnacles grow on whales because sometimes they're pretty slow. They're not moving super fast, whereas killer whales are a faster moving animal. So it's kind of like a rolling stone catches no moss, a fast-moving whale not going to pick up barnacles. But it's interesting that a neat fact about gray whales, I was saying how they're bottom feeders.
Yeah.
When they dive down to the bottom, they always turn to the same side, either left side or right side. Just like how we're left-handed or right-handed, you can tell which side the whale uses because there's less barnacles on it. They get scraped off.
So cool. I love it. I just sent a link in the YouTube chat too that humpbacks have a very specific kind of barnacle that only exists on them. It's why they have a quite distinctive appearance. So really, really cool question. Thanks, Elena. All right, live classes. We're coming back to y'all one more time. Mr. Alston's class, kick us off with another one. Hey, guys. Hi, so many questions. And I will note, you can write me more later. All our classes can email me more questions. I'll pass them along to Joe, but share one live.
How big is their with the orca whales? How big is the the bellin, the thing that's like in their head?
Yeah. Cool question.
Awesome question. So the melon is kind of why it gets that name. It's roughly the size of like a watermelon, and it would sit on the whale's forehead here. So it's kind of interesting. Like, Jesse, if you bring up my slide that shows the title page for my program, you can see how the whale has a rounded forehead. That's a soft structure, so you don't see that on the skull. It's about the size of a watermelon, filled with jelly, and it's connected to the blowhole. So the whale makes the noises in its nose, its blowhole, pushes those sounds through the melon, which amplifies the sound. There you can see that rounded forehead on the killer whale there. So the fluid in that melon amplifies the sound. Sand travels a lot better through fluid than it does through air. It shoots that sound out like a beam from the whale's forehead, bounces it off stuff out in the ocean, and the echo comes back to the whale. Their big ear bones, these are models of the whale's ear bones here, sit back connected to the jaw up around here, and they pick up that vibration through fluid-filled chambers in their jaws that go to their ears, and it's how they see underwater. It's amazing. So yeah, the melon, roughly the size of a watermelon, hence the name.
Very, very cool. Did not know that. Thanks, Joe. Colin, we're heading to you, Lavi, and then we're going to wrap up with Mrs. Fisher in a minute. Come on in, Colin. Take us away. Hey.
How big is a blue whale's heart?
Blue whale's heart.
I don't have that number off the top of my head, but it is massive. Jesse, probably help us out. How big?
I'm a big blue whale fan. So as big as a car, and its aorta, so the main artery in a blue whale's heart, you could literally swim through as a person. Its tongue is the size of an elephant, and its tail is 24 feet from fluke to fluke on the biggest blue whales. So it's the biggest animal that's ever lived. It's insane. It's like twice the size of the biggest dinosaur. Like it dwarfs everything back from the, oh man, how big is it? Diplodocus, brachiosaur. Very, very cool.
And as I was saying before, it's amazing to think these animals get that big, eating some of the smallest things out in our ocean. It's incredible to think how much food is out there. Yeah. Even little tiny critters floating around can feed these massive, massive animals that we find off our coast.
Same with the biggest sharks. All the biggest shark species in the ocean today are all filter feeders. So like megamouth and whale shark, really, really cool creatures. Lavi, we're heading to you, and then we're going to wrap up in Carsonville in a minute. Come on in. Take us away. Hey.
Hi. So I was also wondering, we're in North Carolina. Could we possibly see killer whales here?
I would think it's possible, yeah. There's definitely killer whales in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, I'm not sure what their numbers are like off North Carolina, but I know for sure there are big whales. Like I remember you guys were talking about seeing humpback whales. I know that there's humpback whales and some of those bigger whales off of North Carolina. It might be a bit rarer to see killer whales, but it's always possible. I often say it's never a guarantee to see whales, but always a chance when you're on the ocean.
It's funny because I've never heard of anyone in southern United States seeing killer whales. It is in their distribution maps. They absolutely can be there. I'm in Newfoundland. We've seen the other whales off our coast. We haven't seen killer whales, but they occasionally come here. Really common to see them in British Columbia. Like you folks in BC, of which there are so many, you're in like one of the orca capitals of the world. So lucky all of you, and I hope you go out and take a look. Cool question, Lavi. All right, before we go to Mrs. Fisher's class to wrap up, I just want to note this is part of our series in conjunction with Parks Canada's BC Parks. Check them out here. Check them all out on YouTube. I'm going to follow up with a whole bunch of extra learning to keep the excitement going, but we hope you'll join us for many more in the months to come. Mrs. Fisher, we're going to wrap up with you. Thank you so much for being here, and take us away. Hey.
Hey. Heyo. Oh, is it possible to kill killer whales?
Oh, can you see us?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. What was that last bit of the question?
There we go.
There we are.
Kill
I'm sorry. Can a killer whale kill a
shark?
Can a killer whale kill a shark?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes, they can. There's a type of killer whales off our coast called offshore killer whales. Jesse mentioned some killer whales hunt great white sharks, and these offshore killer whales are shark hunting specialists. Fun fact about them, sharks have skin that's as rough as sandpaper. And so those whales that hunt sharks, their teeth get worn down to nubs. It's wild, but they're still able to catch sharks with these really nubby teeth.
We've got footage off of California's coast of all the great white sharks like literally getting spooked and swimming away as fast as possible like this, and then immediately you see an orca come into the picture. Like they are the ape. They love eating shark, and in fact they eat so many sharks they'll only eat the liver. Like they'll leave the rest of the shark alone and go for their favorite part of the great white shark, which is totally ridiculous. So a big thank you guys for that question. Joe, this has been so much fun. We've got 6,000 kids here today, which is insane. Is there any final message you want to leave us with before we say a big thank you and farewell?
I just want to thank you again for taking the time to join me. Please feel free to reach out through Jesse if you have more questions for me. I'm really happy to teach you more about whales and share more information about what you can do to help protect them. Thanks again for having me with you today. Until next time, à bientôt, mes amis.
Thank you so much, Joe. As you know, we're going to bring in all our groups to say a big thank you and farewell. So, Mrs. Fisher, la vie, going.